Welcome to ABMA's Inside the Boiler Room. I am Scott Lynch, President and CEO of ABMA, and your podcast host for today's episode. I'm excited to be joined today by someone that knows more about boilers than almost anybody else that I know. He has been working in the boiler industry for more than 40 years, and his company, Fire and Ice Heating and Cooling, I'll get that right before the end of the podcast, has been servicing and selling boilers throughout Western Pennsylvania and West Virginia for over 3 decades. His passion for boilers is never ending, and he shares this passion as an international author, columnist, and consultant. And he even has 13 books that are being sold on boilers on Amazon. Please join me in welcoming Ray Wohlfarth to the podcast. Ray, how you doing?
Hi, Scott. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, we're glad to have you. You know, we caught up at the HR Expo, and you were telling me about some of your new ventures and your new books. And I
Yes.
was like, this is a perfect opportunity to bring Ray in and talk about what he's working on today and his passion for the boiler industry. And I think that you have so much knowledge and so much passion that we want to make sure others know about it and people who are searching and looking for things in the boiler industry, that they know that you're a resource for that.
Thank you. Thank you. I joke around when I'm doing my seminars um, that I consider myself a boilerholic, and the people will look at me and I'll say how I knew I was a boilerholic. There was an old movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger where they had this fight scene in the boiler room, and Arnold, stops the guy, and I'm in there thinking, look at the piping. He pulled the piping right off the wall, and I'm thinking, who does the maintenance here? And then I knew that I had an issue going. So,
But
that's
I think it's funny that you mentioned that, because there are so many action movies where the fights end up in the boiler room, right? It's like
right,
they're down in the basement, they're running around, they're fighting, and then all of a sudden they're in the boiler room. It's kind of
right.
crazy. And
They give
we're
us a
known as
bad
a
name.
great fight scene location.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Not the boiler rooms I've been in.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So why don't we start off though? I thought that it would be good just to chat about how you got your start. I saw on your YouTube page you mentioned that you were an apprentice, and I kind of want to know how how this passion for boilers started with you, and how you got into the industry.
Thanks. Well, I went through the steam fitters apprenticeship in Pittsburgh here, and my first job as a first year apprentice, we were putting in cast iron sectional boilers in a convent.
Mm-hmm.
And so the journeyman, usually they send you back to the shop when you're going to start up, and he said to me, so I'll let you hang around and watch. I said, okay. So he started this, and it started banging and making all kinds of noise. And I'm terrified. Like my eyes are gigantic. And this guy has a smile on his face from ear to ear.
Right.
And everybody in the
You're
building
terrified, but he's like, this is awesome.
yeah, everybody in the building took off and ran out in the parking lot. They thought for sure the boiler was going to blow up.
Right.
And then after about 20 minutes, he had this thing humming. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, this is what I want. I want to be able to be like a lion tamer like this guy was.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So then how do you get from there to starting your business, and like what is the evolution there within the boiler industry?
Um, I was doing the steam fitter work, and I was working for a control company,
Mm-hmm.
and I was involved in a real bad wreck, and I couldn't do the work anymore. So I started doing sales, and this company came for sale, and I purchased it, and they specialized in boilers.
Mm-hmm.
And I came into it, and I thought, well, I have to work harder than anyone else, because when you walk in, they're like, oh, this guy doesn't know anything about boilers. So I studied and studied, and I had a steam boiler in my first home, and it wasn't working right. And so I became a student of the arts. Was reading all the books on it, and this was before
Mm-hmm.
the internet.
Right.
And I came to love them. I mean, they have their own personality, um, and they're just an incredible piece of equipment that it's sad for me to see them kind of being pushed out the door because they're incredibly reliable. They're
Hmm.
very safe, and they they'll give you decades of life, and the newer options don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll get into that in a little bit. But I wanted you to and you talked about this a little bit, but what are people missing when they talk about the boiler industry and boilers? What makes this industry so special, and why do you have so much passion around it? And because I know that you do, and but you also feel like, and we've had conversations about this, that people just don't get it. They don't understand it. They don't want it. They maybe it's the thing that they need to have, but they don't really care about. But well, what are people missing about this that they need to know?
Because the schools don't really train people on boilers
Right.
anymore.
Yep.
Everybody is trying to push the idea of heat pumps and boilers. We'll go on to job sites, and I could probably go on to two or three job sites that have 40, 50, 60-year-old boilers that are still working great.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't understand it. And then they get scared because they see all these horrific boiler explosions on Google and things, and they're terrified. Even the insurance companies are afraid of it. I talked with our insurance underwriter, and he was like, "Oh, you work on boilers? That's dangerous." I said, "No, it's not." I said, "We have redundant safety controls on the pressure. We have redundant low water cutoffs." I said, "There." I said, "Well, we're safer than the other ones, than the heat pumps." I said, and besides, like my part of the industry is we usually go for low pressure steam. I said,
Mm-hmm.
"We run the boilers at 2 to 3 psi." I said, "A heat pump operates at over 400 psi, and it's got a toxic gas inside the pipes,
Right.
and they just
Complete
don't."
misconceptions. Just people thinking that they know.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. So why do you feel like the boiler industry and our products don't get the recognition that they deserve? Like you know the industry. Many of our members know the industry. We know what technology is out there, how we're building these very energy efficient products today, and how we're helping people get to a small carbon footprint. Why don't people know about that? Why do people well, why is it just there's a misconception out there about today's technology and the boiler industry?
Well, I think it goes back to the engineers. A
Yeah.
lot of the consulting engineers don't know anything about boilers.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be at one point that boilers were everywhere in people's homes and people's um, businesses. And now, that everybody's starting to go to rooftop units or whatever. And the drawback I hear from people is that, well, your boiler doesn't provide cooling. And I said, well, my comeback is always, well, your stove doesn't keep your beer cold, does it?
Yeah.
It's two separate things.
Right.
And
Right.
so it kind of frustrates me because there's not a lot of knowledge. And I've been trying to, spend my time to share that knowledge about how great it is. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's awesome. I mean, there's no real proprietary parts on all these boilers. If you buy a different type of heating system, you have to go back to the manufacturer to get your part. Whereas, with the boiler, you can get a low water cutoff at pretty much any supply house. You can get
Mm-hmm.
um, a pressure tool or an aquastat pretty much anywhere. The customer is not held hostage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll transition to that. We started out by saying your career path and where you came from and your passion for the industry. But you really have focused a lot of your attention, over the last 10, 15 years on education and writing books and doing some other things related to getting people more educated on the boiler industry, on boilers, on
Right.
products, on um, where did that passion come from? Where did that start? And then how did that kind of open the door to all these like opportunities? And I mean, writing a book is not something that's like, you don't just like do it overnight. I mean, this takes a lot of effort. But you, I know you have a passion for it, and I'm just wondering where that kind of came from and where that started.
Well, two things happened. About 15 years ago, I had a pretty bad health scare.
Okay.
And I was talking with a friend of mine, and he had this saying. He said, "Don't die with the song still inside you." And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, "What are you talking about?" And he
Right.
said, "You have all this knowledge. You should pass it on." And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, he's right. And so I started doing it, and I love to write. I write every morning from about 6 a.m. till about 8 a.m.
Wow.
And I take a creative writing class twice a year, and I
Uh-huh.
write stuff for that. I just enjoy it. It's my escape from all the craziness that you
Yep.
have when you're running a business. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I enjoy it.
So where do the ideas come from for these books? I went on Amazon. I will do a couple of things here. First, I will share that I'm not only the president of ABMA, but I'm also a client.
Wow,
Here are two
thank
of your
you.
books right here. And I went on Amazon. I looked at all the various books that you've written, many lessons learned from your experience. Where do the topics come from? What like kind of motivates you in one direction versus another when you're
Well,
getting ready to write something?
when I my first one was kind of a generic book on boilers, both
Right.
steam and hydronic.
Mm-hmm.
And then through my classes and through uh, my articles, I have feedback from people, and they say, "Hey, we'd like to know about this."
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you, for instance, I was at a seminar somewhere, and there was this quote unquote expert on
Yeah.
breweries. And he's in there and he's telling people, "Oh, you got to run these boilers at 15 psi." And I would never like call someone out in front of other
Sure.
people. So I pulled him aside and I said, you can't run a boiler at 15 psi, a low pressure one.
Right.
He said, "Oh, yes, you can." I said, "Well, yeah, let me rephrase it. You can do it. You shouldn't, though."
Right.
And I went through why, all the reasons why you shouldn't. And the people that make the brewery equipment, they're trying to get it as small as possible. So they're telling people, "Hey, you need 15 psi." Well, what happens when you're running it that high, you start to trip on the manual reset limit, which is set for
Right.
15, and you
Mm-hmm.
start to pop open the relief valves, and then they lose all their the production for the day.
Right.
So I thought, well, this is like the Wild West. These people are crazy out there in these
Yeah.
breweries. So
Yeah.
I wrote
Well, and,
the
and I also think that in those situations, a lot of these people that are starting breweries or starting distilleries are using it. It's like a hobby that they're turning into a business. So they don't
right.
really have the background to understand the chemistry portion of it and the boiler portion. They're just focused on making, whatever they're making, whether it's beer or some kind of, whiskey or something. So they're counting on the people that are in the field that are installing it to tell them what to do. And if they're not knowledgeable, then and who knows what's happening, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you talk with boiler manufacturers that kind of cater to the brewing industry,
Yeah.
one of the most common questions they get asked is they'll say, "Oh, this pop safety valve keeps tripping on me." Well, and they want to get this under warranty.
Right.
So I did a lot of research, and I decided to write the first book on lessons learned brewing steam.
Right.
And then I started to talk with these brewers. I'd talk at different organizations and none of them knew a thing about maintaining a boiler.
Right.
We had one guy, this brewer, that said after every day he was done brewing, he drained all his water out. I'm like, "Oh my God, that's like liquid gold. You don't want to do
Right.
that."
Yeah. You're like wasting a lot of right.
And I said, "You're going to be replacing your boiler." And I explained to him why, and so I decided I was going to write the book on there. My
Mm-hmm.
last book is on wiring diagrams, and I was on one of the industry sites, heatinghelp.com, and I asked people what they would rather see is a steam seminar or a hydronic
Right.
boiler seminar. And every one of the technicians or every one of the people on there responded, we need something that people can understand wiring diagrams. These young people we have, nobody knows anything about wiring diagrams. So I
Okay.
thought, well, I put together a book on how to read them, how to understand them a little bit. I
So
thought,
how
well,
long? Because I mean, this book, I'm looking at like this one. This is the servicing one that I have here, and
yeah,
then the one on brewing, which is a little lighter, but not much. I mean, we're talking about like 100 pages here, and there's a lot of 250 pages. There's a lot of diagrams and charts. I mean, how long is it taking you to pull one of? I mean, I'm sure that you're getting better at it as you go,
yeah.
but it's got to take a while to work on something like that.
The first one took 2 years, and
Wow.
I
Okay.
cursed the guy that talked me into doing it. But I can get them out in about like I try to do one a year,
One a year. Okay.
and on different subjects. And
Yeah.
I do most of my own graphics.
Hmm.
I have a couple programs I use, and because what happens when you're dealing with service technicians, um, male service technicians are very kinesthetic. They can see something better
Right.
than reading it. A lot
Yeah.
of these guys don't like to read.
Yeah.
So I try to keep the words down, and I give them better looking graphics so they can understand
Yeah.
what
Well,
they're
and
looking at.
that's the one thing that I noticed when I was looking through this book, and you can see like some examples of the pages. I really felt that there was a lot of good graphics in here and a lot of good. It wasn't just tell me, it also was a little show me. And that's
Right.
hard in a book because, you don't have like a PowerPoint or you're not engaging
No.
that way. But it really felt like it was something where you could look at the chart and the graph and really be able to see what you're talking about. And I think that
Right.
would has much more value than just a whole bunch of text.
And then one of the things I like to put in my books is I'll have rules of thumbs or formulas. What I want is I kind of envision a service technician out there on a no heat call
Right.
trying to figure out what's wrong. And with my rules of thumb, and he can look at it or she can look at it and say, hey, this is too small or that's too small. So that's how I did it. And during COVID, McGraw-Hill contacted me
Mm-hmm.
and they asked me to redo one of their books. And
Okay.
it was a huge honor because it's a 700 and some page book.
Whoa. How long did
Yeah,
it take you to edit that thing?
that was about a year and a half, and this is a
Oh,
year.
wow.
And it was an iconic book. And one of the challenges of it was I write in my own voice, like
Right?
I
Yeah.
talk, and I had to temper that to try to work in the original author's voice,
Yeah.
but so it was fun. It's a great honor, and I don't make as much money on those books, but it is nice to be able to
Right.
say, hey, I've written for McGraw Hill.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we move on, I have a couple more questions, but is there anything else in the lessons learned books that you've written that either referencing one of the books or referencing something in one of the books that you think is either a misconception out there or something that people really should know if they're operating or working with boilers? Like, is there a certain book that really hits home with that and something that you want to share?
No, I think the biggest misconception is people think that boilers are dangerous,
Yeah.
and I'll laugh when I'm doing my seminars, and they'll say, "Oh, boilers are really dangerous." I'll say, "Really?" I said, "I said there's less than in the United States. There's less than probably a half a dozen people that die each year from boilers."
Mm-hmm.
I said, but there's 150 people die a year from coconuts falling on their head.
Right.
We
Yeah.
don't have this big thing like, oh my God, we need to have coconuts. And 13 people die every year from shaking a vending machine,
Yeah.
and
Right.
so and that's 30% more or 50% more than what is on there. And then they used to be able to track what was the cause of boiler accidents.
Right.
And the leading cause of boiler accidents was maintenance, improper
Right.
maintenance.
Yeah.
So
Right. Yeah.
if they don't do it that way now. Um, they try to list the cause as something mechanical that's not somebody's fault,
Right.
but
Right.
it
I
is.
get it. But the truth is that if you are properly trained on the equipment and the equipment is properly maintained, the chances of an accident occurring is slim to none. And
Exactly.
and really that's where we get concerned as an industry, is that people that are operating the boilers are not fully trained, or that they're not doing the proper maintenance. And we have a boiler maintenance schedule that we created for ABMA purposes, right? That we use, and we tell people still check with the manufacturer. But what we hear from our members is that the daily stuff gets done because it's usually like a daily checklist. But the stuff that should be checked once a week or once a month or every quarter,
Exactly.
that never gets done. And
Right.
so it's only and so there are things that our people are missing. And when they're missing that stuff, they're missing all of the red flags or the initial issues that might occur they're going to lead to the bigger issues. And
Right.
so that's why I think it's so important that the people that are operating boiler rooms and that are in the technicians in the field, they get the proper training, and they they read your books, and they find places to get educated and to get engaged, and that companies support their people being properly educated on the equipment, and that you're not just counting on the guy who was the most senior person there who tells everybody else what to do, or the manual that was created by the supervisor that was there 25 years
Right.
ago, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I had one guy, we sold new boilers to him, and I was talking with the installer. We don't install it. We were just going to start
Right.
it up. And he said, "Oh, you better talk with the custodian here. He doesn't like your boiler at all." And I said, "Okay." So I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, here, what it turned out was he had an old cast iron sectional boiler with an atmospheric burner.
Mm-hmm.
Every night, morning when he came in, he would put his food under there in a metal pot, and it would heat it up so it'd be ready by lunchtime." So my boiler was sealed,
Right. So he
and
couldn't do that anymore.
no. So what I did was I went to Walmart and I bought him a cheap microwave. And
And he loved your boiler all of a
oh,
sudden, right?
he did. But it was just
That's
funny.
hilarious.
But
Hey,
you
so I
never
want to
know.
wrap up by asking you about your YouTube channel. So you've written a whole lot of books, and you looked at another new opportunity here. And I know you launched the YouTube channel in
Yes.
2024. You call it the Boiler Room Detective. Can you tell me what the YouTube channel focuses on, and how you come up with the episodes and what you're doing there?
Um, well, a lot of it is stuff that people have asked me questions about, or stuff
Right.
that I've seen on the job. But what it is I wanted something that would be like a 5 to 7 minute quick snippet on something that happened in a boiler room and what we found to be the cause.
Right.
Um, a lot of people don't want to watch a 2 hour video on
Yeah.
boilers. You're
Yeah, sure.
you're zooming through. So I wanted mine to be just something that was 5 minutes. They'd be able to look at it every Friday morning and go, "Oh yeah, I had that happen."
Mm-hmm.
Like the a couple weeks ago, I did one on why was the boiler feed tank flooding,
Okay.
and I had two people comment to me saying, "Oh my God, I had the same thing happen. Thank you."
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a rewarding feeling. And what I also noticed was that it's a whole different avenue than what I was talking to before. Um, my book sales have jumped drastically since I started the YouTube channel, which
Oh, great.
is okay for me. So it's a whole different market for me, but I'm having fun with it.
Yeah, and it's a different way to get to people, to access people. That's the reason why we started the YouTube channel, and because we were initially doing the podcast just as an audio podcast, but we realized we were really missing out on opportunities to have it be a video and audio and use both sources. So it's still out on the podcast, and you can listen to it audio, but the video YouTube version of it, it gets a little more dynamic. You see the other individual, and we're having a nice conversation. But it's just another avenue of getting information out there. Well, Ray, look, I love your passion around all of this stuff.
You.
And I think that you are a really important piece of the boiler industry. And, and I've enjoyed our friendship over the years. And I think that we need more people like you being out there educating and making people aware of all this stuff. And I guess the only thing I want to just leave with, one last question, then we'll wrap up, but is, tell people why you're so passionate about steam and why you think steam's here to stay, and why it's such a benefit and something that people need to realize and continue to use and realize that there's a future for it.
Well, I'll just give you an example. The Empire State Building in New York City. That building is heated on 2 to 3 pounds of steam pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And they won a LEED Gold Award for efficiency for that building.
Mm-hmm.
So that there is efficient ways of piping steam. And I was talking with an engineer that he was saying, oh, steam's terrible. And I was giving him the story about the Empire State Building. And I said, steam doesn't need a boiler, or it doesn't need a blower, a pump, or a compressor to move BTUs around the building. It does it on steam pressure. A typical system will be, they'll go 1 ounce of steam pressure will shoot water or shoot steam 150 feet. And so, and he looked at me and he said, really? He said, you could get LEED points for that. I said, I know, and
well, I think the other part of this is, for like food processing and other, if people don't even understand like why steam is so necessary for industry as well, in terms of all the industries that use steam and need steam. We talked about the distilleries and the beverage industry, but there's endless, and hospitals as another area where without I think that WARE does a number of videos, and they're a member of ABMA. And they've done a video where like what the hospital would look like if there was no boiler room, and it's like there is no hospital, right? It's like the hospital can't run without the steam and hot water that the boiler room is creating. So I think it's just one of those things that ABMA is now taking on as a role of our organization. And over the next year or two, we will be promoting the boiler industry and boilers as an industry that is innovative, that is invested in, that is going to help people in the future, that is all around you and nobody really knows it, because I think that there is a story to tell, and it's a good story.
Oh, I agree. We had talked, I wrote an article, I sent you a copy of it about how comparing the efficiency of a heat pump to a steam boiler. And, like I just saw where Parker Boiler just came up with a 96% efficient steam boiler. And, so if you decide you're going to send your gas to the utility company, most utility plants are about 40 to 50% efficient. And then you lose about 6 to 8% transmitting it in from there. I can put a 96% efficient boiler in my building for steam or whatever, and not have to not have nearly the loss that I would have with the electric.
Yeah. Well, Ray, thanks so much. Now, I mentioned it earlier, but all of your books are available on Amazon, right?
Yes.
And they can find you on YouTube with the Boiler Room Detective.
Yes.
Where else can we find you, and where else can people get in contact with you?
I write for different magazines. I don't write articles as often because, they think that the boilers aren't the future.
Yeah, but you sell them on it. You get it in there.
I know, I do. But some in plumbing and mechanical, engineered systems, I rode for National Board, RSES,
Mm-hmm.
and mechanical business up in Canada.
And
So,
you've written articles for today's Boiler too.
yep.
Yeah, our magazine. And Ray, what's your email address if somebody wants to email you directly?
It's Ray at fireiceheat.com.
All right. Well, hey, Ray, I really enjoyed the conversation.
I did too.
Always
Thanks,
enjoy your
Scott.
passion for the industry. Hope people check out your books and check out your videos. And well, I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Yes, sir. You too. Take care. Tell Shanika I said hello.
Oh, I will. I will. So we'll just wait right there for 1 second and just everybody stay tuned for more episodes of Inside the Boiler Room. Follow us on YouTube or on all your audio platforms. Visit abma.com for more insights on the boiler industry. Sign up for our weekly newsletter and connect with us on all of our social media platforms. And we'll see you guys next month. Ray, thanks so much.
Thanks, Scott.